In this short video, we're going to be making some sourdough bread following a recipe that can be found on dirtcraft.ca. And the key to making a tasty sourdough is your sourdough starter, and that's something that you can also find on our website. But this is our starter here, and basically I fed it with a bit of water and flour this afternoon, and you can see that it's bubbling up nicely and there's a nice texture. So that's what we're going to be adding to our bread instead of commercial yeast. So we'll get started right away. Alright, now the first thing we're going to want to do is take some of our starter and dissolve it into water. So in this recipe we use about 3/4 of a cup of starter. So this is a 1/2 cup measuring cup, and we're just going to put that in with about a cup of water, and I'll fill this up half full again, and now this can be fairly approximate. And so we'll take that, we're going to stir it in, mix it into here, and once that's dissolved we're going to add it to what is 6 cups of unbleached white organic flour and another 4 cups of whole wheat flour, so there's 10 cups in there. And then in the other 2 cups of water I'm going to add a tablespoon of molasses, and that just brings a nice flavor into the bread and gives a little bit more food and fuel to the yeast as they're working away. So now that we have our starter dissolved in the water and the molasses, we're just going to add it into the flour. So into this 10 cups of flour we're going to add somewhere between 4 and 4.5 cups of water. So that's about 3 there, and we'll add another 1.25 cups. And so now that that's all in there, what we're going to do is just stir this in and incorporate it. So as you can see, everything is mixed into a nice wet mixture, and like I said, we'll leave this to ferment overnight. And before we do, we'll just put it into this big plastic bag, and we'll leave that somewhere warm overnight to let those yeast get active and rise right up. So we just started the fire, and you can see that the dough has risen up again after I punched it back earlier this morning. At this point we're just going to scoop it out of the bowl onto, you'll see there's very stringy, which is exactly what we want. And truth is, this dough is maybe a little bit wetter than I would have liked, but we can remedy that by adding a bit of flour to it when we need it. And what I'm doing here is just getting it onto the board. I'm going to add a bit more flour to this so that it's not sticking all over the place to my hands and such, and we're going to knead it for about 15 or 20 minutes until we have a nice consistency, and then we'll split it into loaves and put it into the rising baskets, and they'll stay there for another couple hours until we're ready to bake. So there we are. We're at the point where I've added another cup or so of flour just so it's a bit more manageable and so I can knead it without it sticking to my hands. We're going to knead in the salt now for another 5 or so minutes. And the reason we need the salt in rather than adding it into the ingredients originally is because salt hinders fermentation. It impacts the yeast, so we add it later so that when we're rising our bread it rises nice and high, and we get really nice texture. So I'm going to start adding some salt. And we'll add a couple teaspoons, fold that in, and we'll add a little bit more. So just add enough flour to keep it manageable. Not too much flour, you don't want it too dry, but we're just going to work that for a little bit. and then we'll divide it. So we've kneaded our bread, and now we have this big long 3-loaf monster here, and we're just gonna cut it up into 3 of our loaves. And these here are our proofing baskets. So this is a traditional, they're called brat forms. They really support the bread, they give it a really nice shape, and the patterning in here is imprinted on the bread, so you get really beautiful loaves. And if you can't find these, they are a little bit hard to come by. You can use a bowl with a well-floured tea towel in it, but we find these to be really convenient if you can get your hands on them. So right now we're just going to cut this into approximately 3 equal loaves, and then what we'll do is just give them a little bit of flour. I'm just going to knead them a little bit, and then we're going to kind of form our loaves. So we're going to put the crease at the top so that when we actually flip the bread onto the peel to put into the oven, that crease will be facing down. So I'm just going to get these into a nice shape. Okay, so we have our 3 loaves and the creases are all facing up. So we're just going to lift those, and we're going to just gently place them in our well-floured proofing baskets. And as I said, these are going to rise up significantly. So over the next couple hours while we're firing the oven, these will just be resting, and I'm actually going to take them and put them back in the plastic bag to keep in that humidity. So once our fire is ready to go, then these should be as well, and we'll slip them into the oven for baking.